both of them had sort of the same reaction, and they looked at me and they said, well, first of all, stop aspiring and just start making things, start doing it. Don't say you're an aspiring filmmaker, say you're a filmmaker.
Hey guys, and welcome to another great episode. Well, I'm sure it's going to be a great episode of Creative Corner. I am back this time with my friend Wes Weitzenhoffer,
Hello.
based out in sunny old California.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking a lot about movies. Something that I'm excited about talking about. Because Wes lives, breathes, eats, drinks, I don't know, pretty much addicted to movies. But there's a good reason for that.
Right.
But we're going to talk to him about his love for movies, his experience in the movie industry, and also his podcast with his group called No Laghw Till Brooklyn that he and his friend Steve, who is also an actor, and he's an actor. Wes isn't an actor as much as the behind the camera.
Yeah.
And they do a podcast called View the Right Thing. I can't. My tongue does not want to behave.
No, it is.
How are you today, Wes?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm on your show, so I'm doing great.
Well, I was going to say the reverse, that I'm doing great because you're on the show, but I'm going to go with what makes me feel better.
Sure, okay.
But how's the weather out in California right now? I know here in Atlanta it's actually relatively cool.
It's been hot. It's been way upper 90s, like 99, 98, 100. It was 102 one day, but it's slowly starting to creep back down. So I think it's in the 80s today. And I think tomorrow it's going to rain, which is a nice rarity for the valley. And so I'm hoping we're going to get some cooler temperatures here.
At least you don't have to deal with the humidity that we have to deal with.
Right. Well, it's interesting because we don't normally, but if it does rain and then it's hot right after, then it just it's all sticky and.
I can imagine the climate in California is like, what the hell is this rain stuff? What do we do? And then
nobody knows how to drive. Yeah.
But so, as I was saying, let's get on to talking about movies. I know it is both a media that is close to both of our hearts, and
my favorite topic. So that's good.
So I can imagine we can talk for hours and hours and hours and hours, but don't want to cut you. But
2 hour video.
Yes, but. You are currently an assistant director, correct, with Main Entertainment?
Well, I freelance. I work quite a bit with Main Entertainment. I joined up with them on a film called Compound Fracture, which is a horror film starring Tyler Mane and Derek Mears and my good friend Renee Geerlings, who's Tyler's wife. She actually wrote it. She and Tyler both wrote it, but she was really the person at the keyboard. And I met them. They hired me the day after Christmas, I think, one year, and I interviewed on Christmas Day. No, I'm sorry, Christmas Eve. And then the day after Christmas, I got a call that I got that job, and I worked under a director named A.J. Rickert Epstein. And this was his first feature film, and it's kind of a fun, family-centric paranormal thriller. It's not like a modern horror film, but it's a little bit of a throwback where it's slower. There's not as much gore. There's not as much death. So I started working with them. I went on tour with them. To a couple of their stops when they took the movie on tour, and just became really great friends with them. I love them dearly, and so we've got some more projects in the works. Hopefully,
awesome.
Come on soon. Yeah.
What are some of the projects you've been able to work on as a freelancer? Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of independent film, a little bit of TV. Generally, I kind of stay away from reality. I'm not a big reality TV. I mean, I love watching reality
you
TV,
almost
but
got a spit take.
perfect. Yeah, I like watching reality TV. But when you work in reality TV here, a lot of times what happens is you kind of get stuck in that side of the industry, and it's not really my love. It's not my passion. And but I did work a couple reality shows, but the big one was Hell's Kitchen. Just
Ooh.
and the reason I kind of sought that job out was I had a little bit of time in between projects. I was about to start assistant directing on a feature film, but I had a few weeks, and they needed somebody on Hell's Kitchen just as a PA, and I was like, I'll do a PA, be on Hell's Kitchen. So I just wanted to work on a show where Gordon Ramsay was involved, and so I did that, and I've done. That was a pretty great experience too. But another feature film that I'm really proud of is called Deep Dark Canyon. It's kind of a cool indie crime,
Okay.
teens on the run. I met my very good friend Nick Eversman, who you've probably seen in like he was in like Get On Up, and he was in the Tomorrow People. He was on Missing, the ABC's Missing. So he's a really great friend of mine. Love that guy.
So curious. I know because I'm a huge Gordon Ramsay fan, and I read his autobiography, and I know that from his autobiography, his personality really isn't exactly the way it is personified on on his American shows. That
Sure.
I mean, he's a no nonsense
Yeah.
chef, but
I
I can't imagine he's as big of an asshole as the editing and the shows make him out to be.
No, I think in the kitchen that is his persona. That's the feeling I get. Uh, and I don't know. I've never worked with him like in a kitchen, but the feeling I get is in the kitchen that is kind of his persona because he has extremely high standards, and he put so much heart and work into. Oh, my dog's making an appearance on your show. Hey, Walt.
Yay!
Um, he puts like he put all his heart and his energy into it, and I think he expects other people to do the same. And so I think that he pushes people as hard as he possibly can. I'll tell you the story that I tell everybody about the time I met Gordon Ramsay. Um,
Yay!
so, like I said, I was just a PA on the show, and I was just there for a few weeks. And they needed somebody to watch the phones for the receptionist in the front area. And so I go out there and I'm covering her for like 15, 20 minutes, and in walks Gordon Ramsay, just blows through the room and continues down the hallway. And they shoot in they. It's interesting. Hell's Kitchen. Should I spoil some of the magic?
No, I know it's actually a studio,
Well,
but
it's a warehouse. It's not even on a studio. It's a warehouse out in Century City, and so they build the outside. They built the front facade that you always see the
yeah.
cars up to. But once you go in, it's all just plywood and stuff, and fancy Hollywood effects. But so our backstage area was also, it's elevated on plywood, and he's a big guy, so you can hear him like his footsteps, and he just blows through, and I hear him just like walking down the hall on this plywood, and all of a sudden, about halfway down the hall, he stops, and I hear him turn around, and he walks back, and he looks at me and reaches out his hand, and he goes, "I'm sorry, we haven't met. I'm Gordon Ramsay." And I think that really describes what kind of person he is. He recognized he had never met me ever before, and he took the time out of his busy schedule to like stop, turn around, and come back and introduce himself to me. And I think that's kind of who he is. He's a very thoughtful. He loves food. He's really funny at craft services because I was watching him just like eat, pick up a little bit of candy or a little bit of this snack or a little bit of this snack, and he'll eat it, and he just loves it. He just loves to eat, and it's joyful to watch.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I said from his autobiography. It's just you get a more sense of him, and I imagine that's from your story, that's more of the person that he is. So it's
Yeah.
nice to hear that. But as far as movies go, I think we'll go back to the beginning of movies for you. Not like Birth of a Nation beginning, but
Whoa.
um, I it was a windy, stormy day in 19.
Sure.
But no, I ask everyone that's been on the show, and I like to understand people's inspiration and where kind of the light bulb goes on. And that might become a little redundant for my viewers, but there are particular movies or books where I'm like, aha, this is what I want to do with my life, or this is what the moment I fell in love with the media. Was there a particular movie that just spawned,
That's a really
or movies, if you can't pinpoint one?
that's a really good question. I mean, I do have a favorite film. And a lot of you talk to a lot of filmmakers and they'll go, I won't pick a favorite film. It's like your children or whatever. And I just think that's kind of a BS thing. Um, you know, I actually subscribed to that theory for a long time where I was like, oh, you're not supposed to have a favorite film because there's so many and there's so many good ones. How could you ever have a favorite? But the reality is there are some movies that you just would absolutely watch more than others, and some that move you in a way that other movies can't move you. And so for me, that movie's E.T. I saw that movie as a child, and probably, it's funny. I don't know if I have an aha moment. I saw E.T. when it was originally released, so I was pretty young. But my dad was really into music, and he loved Henry Mancini, and he loved John Williams. So of course I grew up listening to like the Pink Panther and the Peter Gunn theme in our house on the record player, and Indiana, the Raiders soundtrack on vinyl, and he liked all sorts of music. I mean, he liked Fifth Dimension and Isaac Hayes and all sorts of cool stuff. But the James Bond soundtracks, like I listened to Diamonds Are Forever like a million times on vinyl. So I kind of grew up hearing movie music and sort of like being moved that way. My father actually took me to go see Henry Mancini conduct live, and he took me to see John Williams conduct live. So that was sort of my introduction to film, and sort of I grew to love film initially through music. And as I got older, when I was like just pre-teen years, my parents suggested we went to a play. We went to like a community theater play, and I loved it. I was like completely enthralled by this play, and that theater had an improv class. Like I don't remember how many weeks it was, but it was like a little like improv class, and they had adults and kids. And my parents were like, "Well, why don't you do that? That sounds like a fun activity for you to do." So I did that, and I fell in love with acting. And when I was old enough to be able to take drama in school, I took drama, and I just put myself into that. I was like really all about acting and acting and acting. And I was in school plays, and I was in community theater plays, and so on. And then I started writing, because I was like, you know what? I like the stuff that I'm in, but I feel like these stories should be told. So I started writing, and I was not good at writing. And then people were like, "Oh, you want to be a writer? Do you want to be a screenwriter?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a kind of a neat idea." And somewhere along the lines, I was like, I want to be an actor. No, I want to be a writer, but I don't really want to be behind the camera.
Yeah.
And I used to tell people that I don't want to have anything to do with being behind the camera. And eventually, writing just it did lead me to school. It eventually led me to college, where I went to the Art Institute of Seattle, and I was in the video program. But of course, I didn't want to do like news. I didn't want to do like TV programming like that. So I really focused on the art of telling stories and being narrative. And I found that I loved being behind the camera, and I loved trying to find a new way or a new twist to tell stories. And I think I was okay at directing, and so that's kind of what led me to here. Is I went from I don't want to have anything to do with behind the camera to I absolutely want to be behind the camera all the time, and so I just continued writing and practicing, and did several short films, and I directed a short film in Seattle just before I moved to LA, and my move to LA was a big deal. It's you hear that Hollywood dream all the time, right? Where it's like, oh, I got on a bus and I moved to LA. I mean, literally, my wife and I, we had very little money in our account. We had the support of my parents, but I was in Seattle doing some short films, going to film festivals, doing a little bit of writing, but not really being happy with what I was doing.
Yeah.
I wanted to make movies, and it dawned on me that the best place for me to make movies was in Hollywood, was to move to LA. So we decided, no matter what, we were going to move to LA. So I put my notice in at my job. I worked at Microsoft. I put my notice in at my job, and I said, if I don't put my notice in, we'll never do it. We'll never leave. So I'm going to force myself to do this. And fortunately, my wife, Desiree, she's been nothing but supportive with anything regarding my career. And she was all in. And I flew to Texas to go see my dad, my mom and my dad. My dad was really sick at the time. And it was the last conversation we had before he died, the last really good conversation we had. And we were sitting in the backyard, and I told him, I said, we're going to move to LA. This is why we made the decision. We're not going to, there's no going back now. And he looked at me and he told me that he was really proud that I had made this decision for myself, for my life. And so that was really important to me, to sort of have that approval from him. And about 2.5 weeks later, he died. So being here in LA now, and meeting Gordon Ramsay and making these movies and meeting people like Tyler Mane and Renee Geerlings and all the other people that I've worked with, it's been the most important thing in my life, outside of my wife.
I really appreciate you sharing stories like that, because
Sure.
I know we've had similar conversations, one on one, and it's a really big deal to pursue your dream, to suck it up and take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I'm going through the process right now myself, and it's encouraging to hear the other end of the leap, that at least landing on solid grounding at some point.
Yeah.
Down the
I mean,
line.
and I won't lie, it's hard out here. I mean, it's hard for us. And I've had friends that have moved out here and ended up moving back home. The town is not for everybody, and the work is hard to get. But if you stick with it and you keep a positive attitude and you come out prepared, there's no reason not to follow your dream. And it's funny, like I sort of look at our lives as like the Muppet movie. We got in a car with hardly any belongings and drove down here without a place to stay with our friends, and have made friends and encouraged our friends to come here, and we've kind of cobbled together this family of weirdos, and we're just trying to pursue our dream, Hollywood or bust.
Yeah. Who are the directors that have impacted you? I know one's taste evolves, as they get older. I know I have better taste in movies than I did when I was a kid, but now than I do, and the type of movies I like may or may not change as I get older. But who are the directors that have been constant?
Sure.
Or cinematographers, or
Yeah, that's a really great.
maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Cinematographer. I mean, cinematographers. Jan de Bont, Tak Fujimoto. Um, Directors. I mean, directors kind of fall in like three categories for me. There's like the visual style that just makes my jaw drop. David Fincher is a really good example
Yes.
for me. And then there's directors who understand emotion. And then there's directors who are sort of a combination of both, and those are my favorite. Are the ones that really get visual style and use subtext with that visual style, um, and also really just pull at your heart. And Steven Spielberg, more than anyone else, is my guy. Two favorite films of all time are E.T. and Jaws, and two completely different films, two different ends of the spectrum, but they both kind of do that same thing, where they're visually. I mean, especially now when you look at Spielberg, when you watch a Spielberg movie now, pretty much every shot is a piece of art. If you just take a still image from every single shot in a Spielberg film now, I mean, artificial intelligence, like as much as people like kind of badmouth that film,
It's a beautiful movie.
it really is. And I actually really like the movie. I like the story. I don't really seem to have the problems that a lot of people have with it, but I do understand it. It's a little long, and there are multiple endings. You could have any ending you want in that film, but man, every single shot in that film is a piece of art. So, so that's the kind of stuff I like. I like, I love Hitchcock. Um, I think David Lean was a really interesting director. John Ford. I know I'm talking about old directors now.
Yeah, how about, are there any newer, up and coming, maybe younger directors
Yeah, I
that
mean,
move you?
I think Ryan Johnson is one of the coolest, most interesting modern directors right now. Um, if you haven't seen, Brick, or yeah, Brick is really the one, man. Brick really is to me is just stellar for him. Duncan Jones is another really great, young and kind of up and coming director. He did Moon with Sam Rockwell.
Okay.
If you haven't seen that, it's visually fantastic with such a small limited space, but also Sam Rockwell's performance in that is, I mean, it's
Sam
awesome.
Rockwell is just awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if where you classify him in, um, where you classify this director in like new, old, or whatever. But George Clooney is another director I really love. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind with Sam Rockwell is brilliant, and the fact that they use practical sets in that, like, that instead of doing a whole bunch of editing like shenanigans, they just like they built rotating sets and things like that. So I mean, just long complicated shots where Sam Rockwell is having to do costume changes just off camera, and then he's on camera, and then he does another one, and then he's on camera again. I mean, it's like nobody does stuff like that anymore, and I think it's brilliant. So those are kind of the ones that newer people. Jennifer Lynch, David Lynch's daughter, I really like her stuff. If you haven't seen Surveillance, I recommend that. Um, Boy, I could just talk about directors and movies like this. You open Pandora's box, man.
No, is that's fine. Makes me talk less. I mean, you know what? The show's not about me. It's
All
about
right.
you. I
All right.
want to profile you and
I
highlight
appreciate that.
you. But um, I don't know if you've seen this movie, but Sam Rockwell was one of those actors where I was like, I didn't realize I had seen him in so many movies until I saw him in The Way Back,
Oh yeah,
and I really like that performance. And I have moments like that with directors or writers or actors. Like, I'll see a performance that I really like, and then I'll go research their career.
right.
Sam Rockwell's just, he's an
He's
underrated actor, I think.
absolutely,
And
absolutely. And the thing I love about the Way Back, is that movie for me. I grew up watching Meatballs with Bill Murray. Where you have this kid who's got this summer and it's miserable for him, and along comes this like mentor at this camp that changes things for him
Yeah.
and gives him like a sense of self identity, and the way back is like a modern Meatballs to me, and I think it's fantastic. It's
I,
really great.
I have an affinity for movies, kind of like that. The well, what would call in I studied a lot in theology in seminary, but there's a theologian named Howard Thurman who calls it the sound of the genuine. When
Hmm.
it's that sound of your true self, and I
Sure.
love movies that explore that. So,
Yeah.
Kings of Summer, way back, Perks of Being a Wallflower,
Sure.
Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and
Yeah, it's kind of
all
like
that.
they're. I mean, Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a really interesting one that you bring up. Are you you're referring to
Ben
the
Stiller.
the other one? It's funny because he's an adult, but it's a coming of age film,
Yeah,
right? They're
exactly.
all they're all like coming of age films that you just highlighted, and I think there's something that really grabs an audience about a coming of age film because even if you didn't have that exact childhood, you remember moments,
Yeah.
and it's so identifiable. So I'm really into those too.
What's another interesting twist on the coming of age, even as adults, Saint Vincent,
Oh,
uh,
sure.
with Bill Murray and Melissa
Melissa.
McCarthy.
Yeah,
That was a phenomenal movie,
right.
and it's just it's an interesting twist on the I guess the mentor. I will just use that term loosely, but the person that comes into your life and alters your worldview and for the better. And it can
Yeah,
be a kid in elementary school or an older mentor. And
yeah,
it's just
and it's fun to watch the person that shouldn't be your mentor be your mentor.
exactly.
You know, because I mean, you're just going to learn from the people that should be your mentor. You're just going to learn the lessons that you kind of already know, right?
Yeah.
It's the weird people that teach you the lessons that you don't know. So
Yes. Get a weird person in your life if you don't already.
yeah,
they
sure,
they will rock your world.
right,
But I think something that we have very much in common is that movies are just an entire experience. And something very interesting that you brought up in one of your last podcasts, "View the Right Thing," and for some reason I can't remember it, but you were talking about 3D and the convention of 3D and how there have been different gimmicks that have changed movies. Like you
yeah,
said, color was a gimmick,
sound,
and sound. Yeah, I mean George Lucas had to have theaters install surround sound for Star Wars.
I mean, go further back. I mean, um, you know, one of my favorite films is silent films called Sunrise. If you've never seen it, you can actually watch it for free on YouTube. If you can watch it on a bigger screen than YouTube, I highly recommend it. It's funny and sad and beautiful, and it's this silent film um, that came out at the same time as The Jazz Singer, which is the first talkie, and it got crushed by The Jazz Singer. But it's this like,
Copies, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's this amazingly beautiful film, and at the time, a lot of people were sort of reluctant because being able to talk on film seemed like a gimmick.
Yeah.
And look where we are now.
Yeah.
Now it's like you have a movie like The Artist, which wins an Academy Award, but like, oh, it's a silent film. That's a gimmick. So now silent films are the gimmick. It's so strange.
Now, in that same conversation, one bone I have to pick with you
Uh oh.
is your idea that 3D is a gimmick that will eventually probably be the norm, or it could be the norm, or
Yeah.
affect. Because I hate 3D unless
Sure.
it's done really well. Like one
Sure.
of the movies that I actually may actually see in 3D is The Walk with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Sure.
Because the 3D could actually add to the depth and the experience of
Sure.
the
But
movie. But
Everest. Everest is about to come out. Everest could be enhanced by 3D. I think in the podcast I talked about Nightmare Before Christmas. If you've never seen that in 3D, I highly recommend it. It will change your perspective of how you view composition. Composition is defined as the meaningful placement of an object within the frame, and there's a lot that's meaningful that we miss because we see when we're watching movies normally it's just this flat plane.
Yeah.
um, Great artists will give as much depth to that as possible, but if they have the ability to really give that depth, it's something truly unique. And I point to Nightmare Before Christmas because they put so much in the foreground that you never really realize. Because we train ourselves not to look at things that are out of focus on film. We train ourselves, oh, this is in focus. This is what they want us to look at. But there's so many layers to that film. And so when you see it in 3D, it really is kind of like seeing it for the first time. But I do think that, look, 3D might not be. I'm not saying necessarily that 3D is going to be the only way to go see movies, but in there are countries that are testing like 3D without glasses. They have these screens that kind of are built like this. It's a whole bunch of this is probably not a really good explanation, but they're kind of like little jagged screens.
Okay.
And one projector projects this way and one projector projects this way, which gives you a feeling of depth, an image of depth. So I think people are consistently trying to figure out ways to elevate 3D and change it and make it easier and more comfortable for people. Yeah, I mean, some people get motion sick. Some people, the glasses don't fit over your glasses. I have that problem sometimes. But if it's used right, I think it's really unique and really fun. I think more movies need to be shot in 3D. I think that would help.
You have all these movies that are like, oh, 3D is the new thing. Let's shoot the whole movie, then add the 3D technology on it.
Convert it, yeah.
And then it affects the contrast, and it's just
sure.
I'm afraid it's gonna go the direction of CGI, and where we've gone away from practical effects. I mean, you look at Mad Max, Fury Road, and how big of a buzz that practical effects makes.
Absolutely.
The artist comes out and it has a big buzz because it's a silent black and white film, but the overabundance of CGI that kind of, or 3D that just takes you, at least for me, takes you out of the experience of the movie.
Well, here's why 3D is not going anywhere, at least right now.
Money.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's money, but it's because you can't pirate a 3D film in a theater, right? Like a 3D movie comes out in China, they can take a video camera and record it, but that's not going to do any good. You can't sell that recording. So, it does come down to money, but it's also about protecting intellectual rights. So, it's not going anywhere. And 3D films this year are making up like half of the box office money. That makes up 50% of your box office, and not every movie is in 3D, that tells you something. So 3D is not going anywhere. And my recommendation, I encourage people to embrace it, and hopefully it will spawn more technology. Again, in the podcast I talked about the Barco experience, which is they basically add 2 more screens to the side of the main screen, and they project other images there. So they did that with the Maze Runner. So they're going through a maze, and now instead of just seeing them go through the maze in front of you, you've got the maze whipping by you on the sides.
See, to me, that sounds cool.
It's cool. But it's crazy gimmicky, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And Warner Brothers had to go back and create new footage for that, So, but could that potentially get people to, filmmakers to innovate? Another gimmick is Dolby Atmos, which I wholehearitly endorse. If you can go see a movie in Dolby Atmos, you absolutely should go see a movie in Dolby Atmos. So, there's gimmicks out there, but they're better for film.
As a fellow cinephile, I want to get your opinion on this. The whole, to me, it seems it's become more cliche than an actual argument for someone to say, "Oh, Hollywood doesn't have any original ideas these days,"
Sure.
and that bugs me because if you look at some of the greatest movies ever made, they aren't technically original ideas.
You're right, like the Ten
The
Commandments, or
the Ten
yeah,
Commandments, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, Shawshank
sure.
Redemption,
To Kill a Mockingbird,
Lion King. Uh, I mean,
right,
it's based on Hamlet. So, what
right.
is your response to that? I think ever growing. It's almost just become just a random like talking point to throw out to make someone seem more like a movie lover.
Sure. I understand that, and I know directors of photography that say stuff like that, and it blows my mind. I have a more relaxed approach to film. I'm very extremely passionate, but like I can recognize that I like bad movies as much as good movies sometimes,
Yes.
right? So there's nothing wrong with liking a bad movie, but just because I like it doesn't make it a good movie,
Yeah.
And I try to preach that to people, and it's not something that people are really coming around to yet. But similarly with the idea that Hollywood just doesn't have original ideas anymore. Um, you're right that Hollywood's been remaking things forever. They've been making already produced material, but I think there are original movies out there. I bet if I turn
Right.
around, I bet if I turn around, I can find one right away. But
Exactly.
um, let's go back to Moon. Let's talk about Duncan Jones' Moon. Um, a lot of people haven't seen that movie, so I guess my response is, how can you say that with your limited view of film? I wouldn't really say something like that to somebody in person, but that's my internal response is you just haven't consumed enough film to really make that call.
I mean, I can also understand. I mean, granted, I disagree with the argument, but I can understand. The other side of the coin was where people are probably fed up with having what's supposed to be good force fed to them,
Sure,
and I mean, but at the same time, I don't mind some movies being remade because they could be much better the second time around. Granted,
right?
Masters of the Universe is one of my um, guilty pleasures. It's a
Sure.
horrible movie,
Yeah, of
but
course.
I mean, granted, Langella is phenomenal as Skeletor, even though he looks like Lord Voldemort.
Right.
But I would like to see that remade and redone, and maybe have the original series and action figures done, you know, more
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk for quite a while for them to remake or essentially make a new one. Um, but yeah, that movie. I mean, you're right. It's a terrible film, but it's so much fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
Dolph Lundgren, Billy Barty, Courtney Cox. I mean, it's a really like stupid, you know, but fun film, and it's harmless. Like, I also hear a lot of stuff about like there just aren't good movies anymore. You know, um, I disagree with that. Or that I don't want to watch bad films. It's like, why not? Like, what's the harm in watching a bad film? You know,
It's just
I
as entertaining as a good film.
it can be. I mean, I understand if you watch a bad drama, that could be difficult. But
Tommy
as a
Wiseau's The Room.
Shut up! It's over! It's not over. Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with this world.
I love The Room. I've seen The Room many many times. I'm a big fan. I met Tommy Wiseau. I mean, he's a crazy character, man. But he he made this movie that he was super serious about, and it's so much fun to watch. It's
It is.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. By the way, Masters of the Universe is playing, I think, in a couple weeks out here, and Dolph Lundgren's going to be there.
Oh man,
So we've talked about going, but I don't know if we are. We'll
you
see.
should.
Yeah.
But that's I'm working on for my channel a I think top 10 or top 20 guilty pleasure movies, and that's going to be on there. I know Tremors is going to be on there, just because it's one of the most ridiculous sci-fi movies. One of the first ones that my dad sat me down and watched with me.
Right.
Plus a
I,
young Kevin Bacon looks like Lion-O.
Right, right. I have it somewhere back here.
yeah, Super Troopers would be high on my list of guilty pleasures.
That shouldn't be a guilty pleasure. It's just a genuinely awesome movie.
It's so fun. It's so funny. So quotable. I like the Broken Lizard guys a lot. Comedy wise, I think there's nobody doing what they do.
But now, as one that works behind the camera, you've given me this advice before, but what would you say to one that is an aspiring filmmaker that's trying to get out there? And because you said something along the lines of just stop aspiring and just do it.
Yeah, well, it was the same advice that was told to me. I've been given this advice by multiple people. Two women filmmakers gave me this advice, actually. Casey Lemons, who did the brilliant Eve's Bayou. Mm-hmm. She did the incredibly underrated Caveman's Valentine with Samuel L. Jackson. She did Talk to Me. And then Jennifer Lynch, who did the Surveillance, as I mentioned before. I said, what advice do you have? I'm an aspiring filmmaker, blah, blah, blah. And both of them had sort of the same reaction. And they looked at me and they said, well, first of all, stop aspiring and just start making things, start doing it. Don't say you're an aspiring filmmaker. Say you're a filmmaker and go out and do it. And I think that's been one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given, because I wouldn't be here, in LA without that advice. That was a big piece to feeling like I needed to make the move.
You've said that over and over and over again. And I know, to me at least, and I know that has to get annoying because sometimes I have a hard head. But
sure.
I think it's amazing when you're a creative person and you allow yourself to get in the way constantly, and then finally you don't, and you just do it. It's like breaking free. I don't know. That's the best way I know how to explain it. It's like your heart and your creativity has been held captive by yourself, and then finally you break free. And that's been a resounding voice in my head since you told me, and so.
Yeah. Well, if I could give other people, give some more advice to people, it would be find a good group of people that support you. There's a lot of people that are going to tell you no or why not. Why. Instead of why not. And those are the people you need to find. And Kevin Smith said this, that he started to surround himself with the why nots. He was like, look at the movie Tusk. That's a movie where somebody goes, why would you make that? But he surrounded himself with people who were like, and fans who were like, well, why not make that movie? That sounds awesome. That sounds ridiculous. And he made this like super awesome, ridiculous film. I would advise people to subscribe to that theory. Surround yourself with the why nots, because that's how you're going to actually experience something. If you surround yourself with people that are constantly going, well, why would you want to do that? Or, oh, that's too hard. Or it's too hard to get into the industry. Or you don't have enough money to do it. Or da-da-da-da-da. It's like what you want to do is you want to surround yourself with somebody that says, well, why not find somebody who's connected to the industry? Why not save up the money to go do it? Why not actually make the film? I think that's just as important as, stop aspiring and start being.
I finally can agree with that. But one last question about movies before we move on to No Lag.
No, I love movies.
Well, we've already been talking like 45 minutes. I looked up and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But one thing that it's been very hard for me to get beyond, and this is my blogging, my YouTube channel, movie making, all that, is, to make a good movie, I have to have the best equipment possible. And I feel like that's a hindrance. I know there are other people that feel like, oh, I have to have something better than a 5-year-old Handycam or an iPhone 4 to make a good movie. And obviously that's not true necessarily, but what's your response to that kind of mindset?
Well, I think it depends on what you're trying to do. Um, when if people say to you, "Oh, you got to have a better camera," say, tell that to Kevin Smith in Clerks.
Touche.
Or oh, you have to have more than one location. Say, tell that to Quentin Tarantino in Reservoir Dogs. Or you have to work a job, a 9-to-5 job to save up the money, or max out credit cards. Say, tell that to Robert Rodriguez and El Mariachi. There are, and I point to those three directors because they all sort of kind of came up together. They're sort of that early to mid 90s graduate class of filmmakers, and they all did things unconventionally. They all did things in a different way, and that's something that I struggle with. That's something that I'm trying to do constantly. Try to find a new way to do it. Why do we have to open the book on filmmaking and follow the rules that they give you? If you can find a way to do it, do it. If your film is if you write a heavily, a big special effects film, your home camera is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? But who's to say that that's the only film that you can make? You could write something that's appropriate for home. How do you think Paranormal Activity got made? It got made with like a home camera and like $5,000 in a dude's house. Like, the Blair Witch Project got made with like college equipment and college students and film ends and stuff. So it's like, yeah, you could have that argument that you got to have all these things, but you could always write something different that allows you, that makes sense to have that type of camera.
So, would you say it's a matter of using the best of your abilities within the limitations that you have?
Yeah.
It's making most of what you have. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I know this story correctly, but I believe that was the case for Christopher Nolan. He made just a low budget indie film with a regular Handycam, and he got noticed, and then my mind is
Memento.
Why did?
Of course, your brain went on the fritz for Memento. Of
Yes.
course.
They made Memento, and then
And now, yeah.
Batman Begins. The Prestige and everything.
Yeah.
It's. I guess if you have the talent, you have the talent, no matter the equipment you use.
Right. I mean, if you go back and you watch Duel, Steven Spielberg's Duel, which is a TV film that ended up getting released in theaters because it was so popular, that dude was like in a camera crouched in the backseat of a car. You can see him in the reflection of a phone booth. Like, your first films are not going to be, they're not, it's not going to be Gone Girl, it's not going to be polished like that. Right. So, again, going back to Steven Spielberg, and you look at Jaws, which is considered to be the first blockbuster. It was a big rated R film. It literally made people afraid to go into the water. And Spielberg thought he was going to be fired every day. Like, nothing worked on that. The shark, like one of the sharks sank to the bottom of the ocean. Like, they didn't know if the shark was going to, the shark that they had was going to be working on any given day. And they were constantly living in a bungalow in Martha's Vineyard, writing the script while they were there. They, shot over schedule. I can't remember. They might have gone over budget, but Spielberg was absolutely convinced that he was going to be fired every single day.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, and because of the limitations he had, because the shark didn't work right, he changed his view of how we see the shark. He worked with the limitations he had. He worked with what he didn't have. And I've read multiple interviews and heard him say that the things that you get told no about are the things that are going to make you a better director, because it's going to make you think more creatively. You know, you have this mindset that like it's got to be this way because I have this vision for this thing, and then when you get told no, it's like heartbreaking. But that's where the best filmmakers rise, is they go, okay, well, how can I do this differently then? So
That's a good point.
yeah, so that's sort of my response. I will say there is one thing that can really kill a film, to me, and that's sound. And as much as I have great friends who are sound people, I love them dearly, but sound people are the ones that very, very rarely will give you a break on price. They're tough. Tough negotiators, but sound can kill your film if your audience can't hear the dialogue correctly, especially if it's important dialogue, or if you're a Kevin Smith and dialogue is the thing that drives your film. Like look at Clerks and look at Mallrats. You know, those are really good examples. People have to be able to hear it clearly. If people couldn't hear the dialogue in Clerks, that movie wouldn't be what it is.
That's very true. But okay, I know we could continue talking about movies and still have a great show. I know, but
Yeah,
I want to be able to promote and profile the work that you're doing. And
I appreciate it.
why don't you explain to the viewers what No Lag Till Brooklyn is, and then View the Right Thing?
Sure. Yeah, No Lag Till Brooklyn's a complicated one. We started that about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I think. And the intention is to create some type of community of artists, a bunch of why nots, essentially. And eventually, what we'd like to do is we'd like to create content that maybe can start to generate a little bit of money, so that way we can provide the ability for other people to create content. So essentially bring more people into the No Lag family. And you know, if somebody wants to make a short film or a web series pilot or something like that, it'd be great if we had some of the resources that they could use, because most people who are just starting out, kind of like what we just talked about, they don't have the camera equipment or the lighting equipment or the sound equipment to do the things that they want to do. So what we'd love to have happen is for No Lag to kind of build and take off. The problem with No Lag is that it's, you know, me and my wife, and we don't necessarily have the time to do everything that we want to do, you know, to really build a fan base or whatever. So that's kind of where View the Right Thing kind of came in. I have many loves. So No Lag Till Brooklyn is sort of made up of movies and video games and board games. We have a lot of board games at our house. We do some video game streaming, although we slowed down on that as we started to focus more on film. And we do a charity event every year for Tabletop Day, where we do, as I mentioned earlier, my father died almost 6 years ago now, and he died from pancreatic cancer. So for Tabletop Day, our event is we live stream 12 hours of gaming, and we raise money for pancreatic cancer research. And the charity that we work with, 100% of the money goes to research. So it doesn't go to admin costs. It goes to research, which is incredible. So we're really, really fortunate to be able to do that. We've done that for 3 years now, and 4th year coming up next spring. But movies is really my real passion, and it's what I know the most, and it's what I'm kind of good at. So we kind of have been refocusing No Lag a little bit towards film, and we started this podcast called View the Right Thing. The podcast is actually called the No Lag Podcast. Every other week we do an episode called View the Right Thing, and we are going to have more other things on the off week soon, hopefully. But so View the Right Thing came about because there's a bunch of movies that I've never seen. And there are movies that when I go, I've never seen Chinatown, somebody goes, "You've never seen Chinatown? I thought you've seen everything." And I'm like, come on. Seriously? How could I see everything? So it's like, I've never seen Chinatown. I'd never seen Sophie's Choice. I've never seen Double Indemnity. And so so there's all these movies, the AFI Top 100 list. It's like that's sort of like the canon of film.
Yeah.
Those are the movies that every filmmaker should see, and I haven't seen like half of them, or or 30 of them or something. So I know, right? So have you seen Sophie's Choice? Right.
Shut up.
So so I haven't seen all these movies, and I have this really good friend of mine, Steve Moulton, and he's an actor. You probably have, if you've seen Sharknado, you've seen him. He's a really like lovable dude.
Yeah.
He's funny. He's got a good voice, and he loves film. Like, just super passionate. He'll watch movies over and over and over again. Whereas I used to do that when I was younger. I don't do that anymore because I'm like, I can't watch this movie a second time because I've never seen this film. So I got to watch this film. And then after I've watched all the other films, then I can go back. And, that's kind of my thing now. I'm a little like neurotic in that way. But Steve will watch movies over and over again. And so he sort of gets this encyclopedic knowledge about film. He retains information in ways that I don't. So I asked him, I was like, hey, I've got this idea. It's kind of like a book club, but it's for movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in a book club, everybody in the club knows what book they're going to read. Everybody goes and reads it, and then a week or two they come back, and then there's a discussion about the book. And that was sort of the inspiration for Review the Right Thing. I have all these movies I've never seen. This will force me to watch them, and then every 2 weeks we'll get on the podcast and we'll talk about them. But we took it another step further because we wanted to have that sort of book club feel. So we said, let's take all the movies that we haven't seen, put them in a bucket.
A Muppet bucket.
Did you want to see the Muppet bucket?
Yes, I've been dying to see what it looks like.
The debut of the Muppet bucket. Okay.
Okay, people, this is a internet exclusive, never before seen.
So it's gonna be totally anticlimactic. It's literally a bucket with Muppets on it.
I thought it was gonna be like the shape of
like
Fonzie
full of felt or something. Yeah, no. So this is the Muppet bucket. I'll show you in here. There's lots of movies in here. So what we did is we put all the movies in the bucket, and at the end of every episode, Steve draws one and reads what movie it is, and then I draw one and read what movie it is. So that way the people that are listening have 2 weeks to be able to listen or to watch those films and be caught up on them. So that way when we do our next podcast and they listen to it, they know what we're talking about. They've been through the process and they get to kind of hear a scene-by-scene account of the film along with what we think about it and maybe some fun facts occasionally and subtext or, just some kind of filmmaker perspective on some of the things. Some of them we don't do as much because, like when you have like a movie like Career Opportunities, which we did, there's not a lot of like fancy filmmaker subtext in there, but a film like North by Northwest, there was a ton. So, we've had some really cool things like Sophie's Choice. I mentioned that one again. I had never seen Sophie's Choice. I never wanted to watch Sophie's Choice. We drew it in our first week, and I threw a tantrum. I was like, I don't want to watch Sophie. I was like, stamping my foot. I don't want to watch Sophie's Choice. And Steve, bless his heart, said, let's just redraw. Nobody will know because we hadn't done a podcast, so we had to draw two to just start it. So nobody knew what we drew, and he was like, let's just redraw it, or let's remove Sophie's Choice, or let's put it back in the bucket. And I was like, you know what? We came up with these rules. Let's stick with the rules. So all the way up into the day of watching it, I was like, don't want to watch it. And I remember struggling to push play, and I hit it. And in 5 or 10 minutes, I fell in love with that film. And that's why we're doing this. Because there's these movies that I'm like, I don't want to watch, but I'm going to love. And I've thought every single film that we've watched so far has had merit. Career Opportunities is not my favorite. I don't think it's the best made film, but they've all been good films in their own right. And even Dr. Zhivago, which was 3 hours and 15 minutes of non-romance that people think is romantic. It's a really well-made film, and it's totally worth seeing at least once. And it's making me a better artist. And I hope other people are watching these movies and kind of joining us for the ride, because, you know, if we could get people to have sort of the same attitude that we have, in that you just go with it, you know, just watch it. Other people are going to find Sophie's Choice for the first time and go, wow, that movie's amazing, you know?
Yeah. And I know, are you on a regular basis taking viewers, listener suggestions, or is that just...
Yeah, the Viewsters. The Viewsters, we call them. Yeah, we do. We don't get a lot of suggestions from the Viewsters. We get tweets and stuff from people, and we've gotten a few Facebook messages. We had one person, Fillory, who messaged us, and she gave us this list of, have you seen these movies? And so because of that, what we decided to do was, when we get lists from people, when we get multiple movies from people, if at least one of us has not seen the film, that's the rule for all of the films, at least one of us has to have never seen the film, we will pick one movie from that list and add it to the bucket. And so we added Fillory's movie to our bucket. We have not gotten a lot of suggestions yet, but we're happy to take suggestions. We're happy to just like interact with people. And I'm hoping, I keep my fingers crossed, that our mascot somebody will draw our mascot for us.
Yes, because I may have a few friends that are watching that like to draw. You're looking for someone to draw the mascot, and please explain what the mascot is, because I love it.
Okay, so our mascot. So we had the first 2 episodes of the podcast were the Untitled Movie Podcast, because we didn't have a title. So we put it out there for the Viewsters. They didn't have a name at the time, but for the listeners to come up with a title. And, we tried to come up with some too. And then, so once we narrowed it down to like 3 or 4, we said what they were on an episode, and we said, tell us which one you think should win. And the winner was View the Right Thing, which I absolutely love. I think it explains what we're doing, and it's a clever pun on a Spike Lee film.
By the way, I appreciate your immediate honesty when I suggested names, and you immediately like, no.
No. I think it was, you suggested one that was like something that I was like, what was it?
I can't even remember.
I can't remember either, but it was one of those things where it was like, it wasn't that it was a bad suggestion. It was that it was something that it was like a reference to a movie or something that I just really don't like. Which we try to stay away from, like, we try not to talk too negatively on our podcast. We try to stay pretty positive. So one of the suggestions was Indiana Jaws, which Steve loves. That was Steve's favorite. Steve rooted for Indiana Jaws to the bitter end. But we had an overwhelming response for View the Right Thing. So we came up with this idea that View the Right Thing is our title, but our mascot could be Indiana Jaws. So our mascot, Indiana Jaws, is a shark with the fedora and maybe like a whip in his on his fin. He could have the satchel too, maybe. The shark with the bullwhip and the hat, we think is a funny mascot.
I'm picturing the Hanna-Barbera shark.
Oh yeah,
character with the fedora and the whip. But guys, if there's anyone of you out there that would like to try your hand at drawing it, definitely give it draw it. Tweet them at me, JM_Finn. I will also include Steve and No Lag and Wes's Twitter handles in the description, so you can also send them movie suggestions. And if you draw the mascot, please send it to them. But
it will be our Facebook cover photo if somebody mascot.
You will get notoriety if you draw. But I would like to offer a movie suggestion.
Okay, let me get my phone so I can put it in my notes. Just one?
Just one. If it harkens back to the 80s, over the top, like teenagers at a lake horror movies, it's not as good as Cabin in the Woods, but it parodies movies like like Cabin in the Woods Dead, but it's called Zombievers.
I saw that on
It's on Netflix.
Netflix. I saw it. I was like, what the heck is that?
It combines the toxic waste spill type zombie horror movies where beavers get infected by this toxic spill with
Kind of like Black Sheep.
yes, it's a lot like Black Sheep.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
I would just love to hear your guys' response to that movie.
sure. Well, it's funny that you bring up a movie like that because so we have one more podcast in September, and it is all about Eve and Double Indemnity, which is why I brought that up earlier. And then we just made this announcement in our last podcast. October is all horror films, so we're doing 4 horror films in October, and we have a separate Muppet bucket that has just horror films in it that either I haven't seen or Steve hasn't seen. And we're going to be drawing those starting on our next podcast. And then once we're done with October, all of those films are going in the regular Muppet bucket.
Awesome.
So there are going to be a bunch of horror films kind of mixed in with so we might be doing a movie kind of like All About Eve mixed with, some other horror films, craziness. So.
Okay, Wes. Now, this is always my favorite part of the show.
Okay.
We are going to do, even though I always say it's a lightning round, I always trip over my mind and make it slower, but we are going to try to do a lightning round where I'm just going to ask you random questions, and you need to give me the first response that comes to your mind.
Okay, I'll do my best.
What is the last movie or the only movie you ever walked out on?
Oh, geez. Well, that's been the only movie I ever walked out on. I don't know. I have a policy. Can I share my policy?
Sure.
It's not very lightning-y because so I have a policy to watch every movie to the end. I believe a movie could be saved in the last act. So, you might hate a film and then it might have a twist ending that blows your mind and it makes you love the film. So I have a policy to watch every movie to the end. So I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for walking it. There are movies I don't like. I'll blow your mind here. I'm not a big Coen Brothers fan. I'm not into Fargo. I'm not into Big Lebowski. I'm not, I don't like any of the Lord of the Rings movies. I'm glad people love them. They're not for me.
Other than E.T. and Jaws,
Okay.
what are your 3 desert island movies?
Woo. Super Troopers, because you'll laugh all day at that. Can I turn around and look at my movies
Sure.
back here?
I'll give you this one. Pardon.
Okay, thank you. Temple of Doom.
Great movie.
It's my favorite of all of the Indiana Jones films. Which, by the way, we won't get into it, but I don't have a problem with Crystal Skull. We can talk about that another time. Oh, this is so tough. Psycho. That's a bad one, but I feel like I should
cinematic classic.
Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't take a horror film, but I'm Psycho. Fine. I can't think of another one, and I love Hitchcock, and it's my favorite of all the Hitchcock films. So,
okay. Similar question. Other than E.T. and Jaws, favorite Steven Spielberg movie?
Oh, Jurassic Park. It's so good. It's so good. It's so much fun. I like Minority Report a lot. Schindler's List, Saving Private. There's so many. Yeah, Jurassic Park.
Favorite Robin Williams role?
Favorite Robin Williams role? Good Will Hunting. I think it's the most real, like the most honest of all of his performances. So, yeah, probably Good Will Hunting. I do like Popeye an awful lot. I grew up somewhere behind me. I grew up watching Popeye. It's like I have it, Good Will Hunting's over there, but yeah, but Good Will Hunting is like my favorite types of films are the ones that make me cry or make me almost cry. So anything that's got a lot of like genuine dramatic performance is going to be right up my alley. So
favorite bad movie?
Ooh, so many to choose from. The Room's up there.
I cannot tell you. It's confidential.
Oh, come on, why not?
No, I can't. Anyway, how is your sex life?
It seems like it should be The Room because I've seen it so much, but I don't want to say that.
Have you seen either of the Birdemic movies?
I have. Alan Baugh's a good dude. Okay, Chick Boxer. That's my favorite bad film.
I have never heard of that.
It is so bad. I don't even know where to begin. It's about a high school girl, and I use that in quotes because this girl is not in high school, who is really into this show about this female hero. It's this TV show called Chick Boxer. Greta Chick Boxer Holtz is her name in the movie, and she wishes she was like Chick Boxer, and she actually goes to take a class to learn how to chick box, and there's like a drug scheme going on and some guys robbing a video store, and one of her friends' dad is a former police officer who's investigating corruption with it's stupid, and like they shoot in a gym part of the time.
Okay.
And you know how like gyms have those big buzzing lights?
Yeah.
Over you just hear the buzzing.
Oh.
Like just stop.
That would drive me nuts.
Yeah, look up Chick Boxer. It's a lot of fun. A close second. No, it's not a favorite, but one I like to point out is called Axem. Axem. E-M. And that's just like a bunch of dudes with a camera that were like, let's make a horror film. And it's bad. It's really bad. It's painful to watch.
For the greatest nostalgic feel, what movie do you go to? I think as far as like childhood, for me, I go to The Neverending Story, or I don't know, sometimes Batteries Not Included, or movies like that.
What brings back my childhood the most? After E.T., I'm assuming I can't pick
Yes,
E.T.
other than E.T. and Jaws.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't pick Jaws for my childhood, but maybe The Goonies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was like that age roughly, when that came out. I was a little bit younger. But like, we grew up. All right, kids, settle in. We grew up in an age where like we just like got on our bikes and rode everywhere and like took our baseball mitts and played baseball out in a field, and our parents didn't always know where we were, just as long as we were back for dinner or before it got dark.
Yep.
So there's something really, really nostalgic about Goonies, as like far-fetched as the story is and the characters are. There's something so nostalgic about like that's kind of what my friends and I were like when we were kids. Is like we just go off and have stupid adventures, and ours were just make-believe, but in the Goonies they got their adventure. So I think that's the one.
That's why I liked the recent movie Super 8, because it had that feel.
See, it's like I know right where they are, man.
I love that movie.
I'm a big fan of Super 8. I meant to mention J.J. Abrams when we were talking about like newer directors. I think J.J. Abrams is like he's up there with Fincher for me, and not up there with Spielberg. Nobody's up there with Spielberg, but
maybe you will be someday.
Oh no, I stood next to Spielberg this summer at the E3 convention, just standing by that dude. I was just like, I called up or texted my wife. I was like, well, I didn't cry, but I was standing next to Spielberg, which was pretty awesome. But J.J. Abrams is I think he's brilliant. I love his version of Mission Impossible. It's actually my favorite of the Mission Impossible films. I thought Alias was an incredible TV series. I love Lost, which I know he produced, but Super 8 is, you're right. And there's something about this film that they do that Spielberg, obviously it's a love letter to Spielberg.
Yeah.
But they did something in there that I love, and it's kind of like, well, when I get my shot, I'm going to do it too. And they have people talk over each other, like dialogue is going on with multiple people. It's like the kids are just talking over each other.
Yeah, I love dialogue like that.
Yeah, and that's just how life is,
Okay, two more.
Two more.
Favorite board game?
Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Yes. My next to Hungry Hungry Hippos. I don't. Not many people remember this, but my brother and I loved a game called The Grape Escape, and
Okay.
it was like Mousetrap, but you got these little Play-Doh, and you put them in a mold, and it made these like little grape guys, almost like the raisin guys, California raisins, but grapes, and you would put them throughout the traps, but there would be like, if you land on one, there'd be scissors, and you close them and it'll cut them in half, or smash them and all that. So it's like that. But
That's cool. Well, just so I don't sound like, because I said I was into board games, I don't want people to think that like I'm into just Monopoly and Sorry and Parcheesi. Pandemic would be a really close second probably for me.
if you haven't played it, check out Legendary. It's a
Have it.
Marvel game.
Yeah, I have it.
I just played it for the first time a few weeks ago, and I love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Absolutely.
I got that, and I quickly bought the Paint the Town Red expansion, which adds the Spider-Man characters into it. Because Spider-Man's my guy. I mean, that's my jam.
Favorite video game of all time?
Ms. Pac-Man.
Really?
No question. Ms. Pac-Man. I think it's the greatest video game ever made.
Explain.
It's challenging. It improved on Pac-Man. It's got a female character as the lead, which I think is awesome. And I mean, everybody knows the sound effects and the music. I mean, it's just iconic. I don't think I've ever played another game that's just as pure as that, and it's fun every time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Wes, thank you for joining me for this episode.
Ooh, it's over.
Yeah, we could talk all night and do like a director's edition.
Yeah, director's cut. Sweet.
But I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about the work that you are doing and what you and Steve are doing. I will definitely make sure, like I said, to put all the Twitter accounts in the description. I will make sure to provide a link to the podcast in iTunes, and just wherever they need to go, I'll make sure everyone gets there. Everyone, make sure when you give everyone, when you give No Lag podcast View the Right Thing, make sure to rate it and review it and let them know what you think. And I want to keep up the trend of them gaining viewers.
I appreciate that.
Well, not viewers, listeners.
Listeners, could I mention one other thing?
Sure, go ahead.
So we just started a Patreon account, which I know is kind of like everybody's looking for money. It would really help us if anybody would just go take a look at our Patreon account. It's if they don't know about Patreon, it's kind of like Kickstarter. It's like a subscription service. You could just donate $1 and you get like updates and our thanks and things like that. But you also, like Kickstarter, get rewards based on how much you subscribe to. And you can change your subscription every month to different things. But we want to do a whole bunch of things. Like we want to add another podcast. And we're really wanting to go to we're going to go to AFI Film Fest in November. And we're wanting to be able to see more movies. And in order to do that, we need a special badge. So we're trying to earn money through Patreon to be able to do that. So, and we want to do every single film we see, we're going to do an immediate video response about that film and upload it right away for all of our listeners.
Patreon, is it for No Lag or is it for View the Right Thing?
It's for No Lag, which is home of View the Right Thing. The only thing really No Lag is focused really on right now is View the Right Thing. We are talking about adding a second movie podcast on the off weeks, which will be theatrical films instead of movies you watch at home. But yeah, so if you go to patreon.com/NoLag, that takes you to it. And you can at least kind of see at least go take a look at the perks, because there's some cool ones.
I hear that Desi's Amazing Cookies are one, or at least they used to be.
They used to be.
No.
They used to be. Nobody bought that one. Everybody wanted that perk, and then nobody bought into it. So
I will make sure to include that link also.
Yeah, I mean, if you like what we say about movies, there is one option that gets you a DVD curated from a list curated by Steve and I every single month. So,
well, thank you again, Wes.
Thank
for
you.
joining me, and thank you guys for watching another episode of Creative Corner. If you liked the video, make sure to press that like button and share the video with as many friends as you want. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for future content. Everyone, I'm not sure when this will be up, but have a good day, good evening, whatever. See you guys.
And he goes, why don't you pull up a chair? And I was like, okay, let's do that. And so I sang with him for a couple of songs. He sort of fed me lyrics to sing or whatever. And then I pointed at the washboard and I went, hey, can I give that a try? And he was like, yeah, totally. So I put the washboard around my neck and I grabbed some tunes and I started playing, and that was it.